How are you, Pete?
Good.
You sound a little trepidatious. Is something okay?
I don't know. I honestly, I felt like you were trying to get me in your van.
How are you, Pete? Okay. I think I know why you are trepidatious, and it's because I am about to take you. And I think you somehow knew this through osmosis, through a visioning exercise. You've taken me through a number of visioning exercises. They've all involved me barefoot in a construction zone, and I've managed to mess up almost all of them. Right? Can we agree on that?
There have only been two, and you've messed up almost all of them?
Yeah, good point. There's only been two, but I've been so bad at them, they feel like five.
Well, let me just tell you, it feels like this is the moment I've been waiting for. This is why we do this show. Please begin. I've taken off my shoes.
Excellent. Okay. So here is your visioning exercises. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're walking outside your house and you're barefoot. You see a construction zone across the street. You don't walk over to it. Instead, you walk back into your house and sit down exactly where you're sitting right now, and you put your socks and shoes on, and none of that mattered. I just wanted to let you know how it feels to be barefoot near a construction zone. Actually, this
We've
is
now done 3, and you've screwed them all up.
Yeah. Okay, here's the actual visiting exercise.
Okay.
And everyone listening along can do it as well if they want, and even if they're driving in the car, because there's no closed eyes involved. Okay. Take a deep breath. Now, I would like to talk about your senses. Identify 5 things you can see right now.
Well, I can see my computer screen and my water bottle and cup of coffee and my hat and a light fixture.
You nailed it. Next, what are 4 things you can hear?
I hear I have headphones on, so I have the slight sense of white noise, the electrical kind of hum coming through the headphones. I hear your voice, breathing, some keyboard. I just heard you put a drink down on the table, I think. And now you're laughing. How meta.
Good. What are 3 things you can feel?
My hands are in my pocket, and so I feel the fabric of my hemp pants. Yes. I feel my wallet, and I feel my phone in the other pocket.
Excellent. What are 2 things you can smell?
I can smell the foam on the mic screen of the microphone I'm talking into right now. And I smell sourdough toast.
Oh, that's delightful.
It's better than the foam.
Sure. This might involve said toast. Finally, what's one thing you can taste? It can even be your tongue, as long as you can taste it. But what's one thing you can taste?
I taste, I don't know why this suddenly feels gross to me, but I taste the sort of lingering spice of jalapeno, which was in my lunch that I had just before we started to talk.
Perfect. Well, the visioning exercise is over, and that may not seem like a lot, but it's called the 5-4-3-2-1 test. And I found it from an article in the UK Independent that was published on February 7th of this year. The basic idea is when you're having a bout of huge anxiety, clinical psychologist Ellen Hendrickson says bringing your attention to your senses grounds you in the present, and counting the items interrupts the spinning of your thoughts. The Mayo Clinic Health System backs this up in a different article, saying this exercise can shift your focus to your surroundings in the present moment and away from what is causing you to feel anxious, again, helping interrupt unhealthy thought patterns. Finally, Harvard University came out, those old smarties, and said that in addition to anxiety, this can help treat depression, addiction disorders, lower blood pressure, and relieve stress. Now, I didn't ask if you were particularly anxious before you began, but can you see how maybe this could help?
Totally. Because what you did and what I did in the process unwittingly is I distracted myself back to what was immediately in front of me, and it put me back in a space of control.
Yes, exactly. And if I can be honest, I just used this yesterday, where I was preparing for a corporate training event that I was leading, and I was using a bunch of new elements that I was trying to just hammer out beforehand, and my brain was just spinning and running and shouting like it does.
Wow.
And I was able to do this sitting in UCLA. I was able to count all 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then almost immediately, I was able to just hone in on what I needed to do and was able to really figure it out. So I know we don't usually just sort of share tips and tricks, but I just thought this one was kind of cool. So I'm glad that you went through it.
Great.
Yeah.
And also really reminds me to brush my teeth. So gross.
Right?
That last one really hammered it home.
Yeah. If you're a gross person asking, like, what do you see? Doritos. What do you smell? Me.
Doritos.
Yeah. Like, what do you, yeah. If the answer
My
to
own
all
armpits.
if the answer to all of those questions is Dorito related, there's some other things that you should work on. Otherwise, I hope this helps people.
Sometimes the talk is real. Sometimes the talk takes me to the place I wanna be going.
Welcome back to What's That Smell? A sometimes funny podcast about humans and their anxieties. I'm Tommy Mess III.
And I'm Pete Wright.
And every week, Pete and I drag out one of our deepest, darkest anxieties into the light to share it, learn about it.
And hopefully laugh about it with all of you. Reach out, send us the story of your anxiety to somethingstinky at whatsthatsmell.net. That's somethingstinky at whatsthatsmell.net.
You're really making a meal
Stinky.
of it, Pete.
Something
Stop
stinky.
saying stinky.
I'm gonna do an ASMR video that is just sounds of smelling stinky things.
That's great. And I'm going to burn YouTube to the ground.
Now, just let me go. We can surrender.
Tom, I come to you with a listener submission today.
Oh, good. I love those. Great.
I'm hopeful that you will relate to it.
Okay.
I know I relate to it, and it relates to so many things that we've talked about on this show. Things like the feeling of control and the feeling of some big monolithic enterprise that's somehow watching us, right? Watching what we do.
Oh.
And it also, dare I say, relates to money. Money is a cause of great anxiety, as we've discovered on the show just this season, even if it doesn't give you anxiety because you're Mr. Perfect Pants and you have no trouble with money.
I don't know if that's what we came up with, but yeah, fair enough. I do
sure I
enjoy
remember.
being called Mr. Perfect Pants.
I think the title of that episode is Mr. Perfect Pants Reveals His Money Secrets. This comes to us. You know what? I'm just going to read it. I'm just going to read it.
All right.
And so I hope you will indulge me. Here you go. You guys, this show hits so close to home every single week. Sometimes I think you're living in my head. Because of that, I am very surprised that you haven't actually covered my anxiety yet. So here goes. I don't know if I have a weird thing about government agencies having control over my life or what, but I'm terrified about being audited by the IRS.
Oh, sure.
Before you ask, no, I don't do anything that, to my knowledge, would get me in trouble, but I guess that's part of the problem. I'm not good at record keeping, and since tax law is complicated, I feel like I don't even know what would get me in trouble if I was even doing it. I know I love government services. I love smooth roads. I love solid bridges. I just feel like there's a huge hole between what I know and what I understand about the tax system and what the IRS is capable of doing to me that's out of my control. Even now that I'm in my late 30s, I'm terrified of it. I hate checking the mail. I start panting when I cross the street to my mailbox, and I pump my fist with joy at junk mail. Big question is,
Oh my God.
Is this a real thing? Keep up the good work. So glad to see season 2 is finally out. Britt. Thank you, Britt.
Thank you, Britt. Wow. Every time you go to the mailbox? Yikes.
I know, that seems like a
That's hardcore.
real daily hit to the head. I'm not crazy about that. So what is your experience with the IRS in particular? Have you ever been audited? Do you have any relation to this particular thing?
I do it was a production company that I had opened many years ago. It was an LLC, and it was for a short film, but because of the amount of crew and everything, we had to open an LLC. And the short film did very well in festivals and things like that, and actually got a little bit of distribution, but no money was ever made of it. And it was just a bunch of freelance contractors working for about a week. And I thought that because I wasn't making any money, then of course the IRS somehow knew this and was just like, we're going to put Tommy in the don't need to worry about it box. To my credit, I was never sent any.
There is that box.
No, there is. I've learned that there is not that box. To my credit, they never sent me. I mean, they never sent me anything saying, "Hey, where are you? You have to keep letting us know and filling out reports." I just let it go because this was many, many years ago. But they did about 6 or 7 years later say, oh, okay, you're delinquent on all of this stuff. We assume that you are hiding money. And I pretty much got not audited, but just I all of a sudden owed over $10,000 at a time in my life when I did not have $10,000 lying around.
What?
And I had to do all of my taxes retroactively for all of those years. It was a big, huge hassle and nightmare. Luckily, as I would hope a lot of IRS things is, part of it was just a big prod that once I did answer and say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, they did reduce the amount. I didn't end up having to pay $10,000, but it was around $7,000, and it was kind of a nightmare. So,
well, that's interesting.
It made me feel incredibly childlike.
Yeah.
In that I was like, well, the adults are mad at me and I didn't even know that any of this was happening.
Isn't that funny how quickly we become children in this kind of, I totally relate to that. I absolutely relate to it. I've never been audited, fingers crossed. I have had my identity stolen through tax fraud. Somebody tried to file their taxes or file fraudulent taxes under my name and social security number that they got from a doctor's office who used social security numbers for their patient IDs. So note to self, if a doctor's office ever asks you for a social security number, do not give it to them.
They don't need that. That has nothing to do with your heart. Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's a trigger warning for me.
Okay.
Anyway, so it took a year, 18 months to resolve that. But I have to tell you, my experience with the IRS dealing with this was actually very positive. They assigned somebody to me. I was in regular contact. They worked with me to get my social security number cleaned and put protections in place for the future. So my experience directly working with the IRS in that regard was good. And yet I am still terrified of being audited, of that I don't have the right records, that I haven't kept the right receipts, that how I'm keeping them is not correct, that I'm going to be, again, treated like a child because I've been doing something wrong when they're the monkeys that created a tax system that is so stupid.
It's so Byzantine and so
it's Byzantine.
Yeah.
Yes. And so I really feel pretty strongly about that. But also I agree with Britt. I also love great government services and roads and bridges and things. So there's a hole. And it turns out, Tommy, we are not alone.
Come on in, everybody.
Get on the bus. Tax Audit is the largest audit defense service in the country. And you can imagine how big Tax Audit is when I tell you that Tax Audit is an Intuit or TurboTax company. So these guys deal with this a lot, with people who may have questionable things going on in their returns. And this is the service that comes to the rescue when they need help. And I say questionable, not in any nefarious, intention here.
Right.
Questionable just means it could mean anything that might trigger an audit. And in fact, they finished in their late or early 2018 survey of Americans' feelings about audits, about the tax law, tax confusion, and they found that nearly half of Americans, 47%, feel anxious when they receive any correspondence from the IRS. Mm-hmm. Nearly a third worry they'll be audited despite the majority of taxpayers, 65%, saying they are very confident that their tax returns are error-free. It doesn't matter if you feel like you're not breaking the law. Right. You're still afraid that grandma's going to come out with the whipping stick.
Right. And that does, I can't believe believe I didn't think of this, but when I directed my first feature film, it wasn't strictly from the IRS, but it was from places like the Franchise Tax Board, because we opened another corporation. I was sort of the head of it. I was getting tons of these, and the dread. I mean, the first thing I would do would put them on the table, and I have this little part of my kitchen table that I'd put it on called the anxiety corner, because it would just be like, I desperately need to open that, but I'm going to give myself a day. And so it just hangs out. And sometimes it'll be like, you're doing fine. And sometimes it would say, all of your employee records are wrong. What's happening? But yeah, that was the anxiety corner where little envelopes of potential doom would live. So
but
yeah,
see, that's it, right? You feel horrible about it as if you don't already have enough on your mind. You're
Right.
making a feature film.
Right.
Get out of the way and let you make your movie.
Yes.
Is all I'm saying.
Yes.
So that is a fascinating thing. The survey out further reveals that 77% of Americans find the new tax law confusing. 42% are unsure that they will benefit from it. 36% are certain they will not benefit from it. And 21% believe they will pay more taxes under the new tax law. Just an interesting sort of anecdote about, as you say, the Byzantine nature of our tax situation. So, a few more quick data points. Almost half of Americans surveyed don't know the difference between a notice from the IRS and an actual audit letter. I imagine it's because many Americans have an anxiety corner.
Oh, sure.
And they just see an envelope that says IRS and they don't even open it, assuming it's an audit.
Right. It'll somehow go
I feel
away.
like we can relate.
Yes.
Yeah, right. It'll go away. 1 in 3 are not confident that they would even know what to do in the event that they were audited. There's that lack of control. It's nonsense, but
Yes.
10% feel they would be very, very unconfident, it says. And 24% of taxpayers correctly selected 3 years as the length of time the IRS is generally permitted to audit past returns. But only 24%, right? That means the rest
Right. Thinks that it could happen at any time.
Exactly. It could happen at any time.
In perpetuity.
Fact, I learned something here.
Yeah.
I thought it was 7 years. I thought that I would have to be panicked about 7 years. That it's only 3 years, actually, I feel like gives me a little bit of leeway to burn some tax records. I don't know what that's giving me leeway to do.
To grow another mustache to try to hide your identity.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the situation of anxiety in the country. So, Britt, you are not alone. And you're not alone just with me and Tommy. You are not alone with a lot of people who are anxious about taxes, and here we are. I mean, right now we're doing this, and it's almost the end of the year, right? We're in the last couple of innings, and we're going to have to start thinking about tax season again. And now's the time for that anxiety. You know, if you want to feel anxious, now's the time to do it. So let's talk then about the reality of the audit situation. And this was the thing. I had a hunch. that we weren't alone. That in fact there were others who would feel anxious about audits.
Yeah.
But I didn't know, when you look at what the actual odds are of you being audited and the kinds of things that trigger you.
Interesting.
Right?
Okay.
To
yeah.
be audited. What do you think? Like, what's your hunch? What is it going to take to get you, Tommy Handsome, audited?
Well, the rational part of me feels that it would take me trying to cover up a crime. Like if I've cooked the books somehow, but I'm nowhere near smart enough to be able to cook books, nor do I have books. Like it's not like I don't have these like ledgers filled with gangster receipts. So my worry would be that it would be kind of like this a larger version of the situation that I brought up, a misunderstanding. And not doing anything wrong on purpose, but falling way behind on something, not clicking the right box. And as a result, and the government, either for good reasons or bad reasons, letting that pile up and pile up and pile up, and then all of a sudden just punch me in the face. Does that answer the question at all?
It does, actually.
Okay.
And it goes exactly where I want to go with you. Let's start with the good news, though, and we'll come back around to your potentially legitimate fear, because
Okay.
now you've made me nervous that you are somehow in bed with some nefarious organization. The good news is that according to recently retired IRS Commissioner John Koskinen,
Oh, I know, John.
do you? He does great work. He'll be missed. He says that the number of returns filed annually is actually going down year over year, and that has been a consistent trend. They are, since 2016, they did fewer audits than any time in the past decade.
Oh,
and it
that's
is
nice.
continuing to fall. That is good news in terms of the overall odds of you being audited. They're falling. So now there is some bad news if you are in the position of IRS commissioner to these falling audits. And this is the other side of that same coin. Now you have to, when you hear this, you have to sit in his position, right? And not a lot of people are going to find that easy to do. But trust me, it will make a difference.
Okay.
If you are the IRS commissioner, here's what he says. Every $1 they spend on audits and other enforcement activities, they bring $4 to the U.S. Treasury.
Oh,
Right? So it's a revenue center.
it's worth it. Okay, got it.
Right. Now, their fear is that if audit rates continue to fall, that revenue to the IRS continues to fall, and it sends a signal that it's easier and okay to dodge paying your taxes.
Sure.
Right? And he
right.
says here, and I'll quote him, he says, if I'm paying my fair share of taxes, but I see others who don't and they get away with it, I'm a lot less motivated to be tax compliant in the future.
Sure.
If I'm sitting in the seat of the IRS commissioner, I get that. I get that. So
that's an understandable way of the system breaking down.
exactly. And there may be a motivation for them not to let audit rates fall quite so dramatically.
Right.
If they can keep the department funded, which is obviously questionable always.
Right.
But that doesn't really answer our question of how likely is it for you, Tommy Metz III, to be audited, right?
Right.
Right now, they say that it's about 1% of the population gets audited. That's not very much. And it really is 1 in 143 chance right now. And if you are just a person on the street who files your 1040 or 1040 EZ, whatever the form is, the odds go down to about 1 in 427.
Woo!
1 in 427 of actually getting audited.
Because I'm easy all day, buddy. So that's good news.
Yeah.
Great.
It is actually not as likely that you're going to be audited as I'm sure people fear, and so that's got to give you some sort of sense of consolation, some sense of reprieve.
Yes.
That maybe you don't have to pay. Do the right thing. Don't break the law, and the odds are you're not going to get selected.
The huge odds are. And it's for other reasons that you said. A lot of it is not a ghost story because it's real, but it's a warning just to make sure that you stay in line. If you're already staying in line, Britt, then you're great. You're golden. That's fine. Yes. But it's important to put the scare of people. Yeah.
Meanwhile, back at the ranch, while you are trying to give yourself positive affirmations that you're free of audit, the IRS is plugging all of this data from all these returns into their fancy computer brain, and they're teaching that computer brain how to find new sources of audit trigger, right? And so it is using all of the big buzzwords, AI, neural nets, machine learning, all of these things to try to figure out what are the most likely causes of return fraud and to dump those out to IRS humans who can evaluate them and overrule those choices. So it's a game. It's constantly a game, and you should play nice.
Yeah.
So you play nice. The computer's not going to find you. You're not going to get audited. The odds are wildly against you being audited. I feel like you can go to the mailbox, Britt, and feel better about your mail, whether it's junk mail or not, because it's likely that anything from the IRS is going to come to you. It's not going to be you're about to be audited. And in fact, that's another thing that the IRS has reported, that in fact, 88% of audits actually are resolved by mail, that you don't actually even need to talk with anybody. And
really?
As in your case, once you engage in a dialogue with the IRS, generally it's resolved quickly and easily. So that's all good news.
That makes me feel a ton better, because my big worry would be about an earlier anxiety about bureaucracy.
Yes.
of
Yes,
just screw you, pay me, screw you, pay me. No, I'm a human and I actually have something to say. There's a reason behind this.
Right.
Yeah, that makes me feel better. Okay.
My fear, here's what that fear looks like for me. It's that my door is there's somebody's going to be pounding on my door, and then they're going to break it down. And it turns out IRS agents are already on my back porch and all the exits are covered, and they come in and start rifling through all of my paperwork looking for receipts. And as it happens, what I have learned in this investigation is that's not what happens at all. And it's a letter, and you can pretty much call or write or email and start a process of resolution, and nobody comes to your house unless you're really breaking the law. I think we're all okay. And then I found this article on a website, careersinaudit.com, the world's leading job board and career resource for audit, risk compliance, and cybersecurity professionals. And it's actually talking about anxiety, the auditor's ally. And as I first read it, I thought it was actually saying that when you are auditing someone, if they're anxious, that serves in your favor because they're scared of you. And it turns out that was my anxiety talking, and auditors are anxious too. Sorry, auditors. I guess that's how much I think you hate me, that I automatically think that you're out to get me and you want to use my weakness for evil.
Bad cop, bad cop. Yeah.
That's exactly right. So anyway, thank you, Britt. Thank you so much for
Thank you, Britt.
I hope that some of this little research is good for you. I hope it's good for anyone out there who shares the audit anxiety. You're okay. You can get the mail free of this burden.
I'm holding on, but now I've got to go. Surrender.
Pete, for my anxiety this week, I'm going to turn the tables on our format a little bit. How do you feel about that?
You're going to make me do a second segment by myself?
I am not going to. And maybe turning the tables is the wrong thing. But this isn't, what I'm going to talk about today isn't an anxiety that I currently have, but is one that I absolutely know that I would in different circumstances. And there's still a good chance that I will go through it at some point. And as a result, I want to talk it out. Does that make any sense?
Is that like an aspirational anxiety? Like, man, if I were anxious, I'd love to have that.
It's like a listener submission, but from myself in the future. So I want to give this a try. Okay, Pete, you've heard of children, right?
Yes, I've heard of children.
Okay. And when a friend or family member says they are pregnant with child, what's the first thing you want to know?
Who's the father?
Who's the father? Dynamite.
I'm sure I've already taken this off course.
Apart from paternity. Okay, yes, fair enough. But apart from paternity qualifications, I think a lot of people want to, of course, know when the baby is going to be born. But then the other two questions are, what's the gender? And what is going to be the name? Granted, a lot of people don't ask about the names, but I have two dear married friends named Scotty and Monica is currently pregnant with their first child. And I wanted to know both of those things, gender and name as well. But of course, you don't really ask a preborn kid's name.
It's most likely it's because, as soon as you hear a name of an unborn child, you immediately say, oh, I knew a Candace. I knew a Mike.
Yes.
He was a jerk in the 4th grade. You better not name him Mike.
Right. You accidentally color the choice and then you're bringing someone in. Exactly. And so I think that's, apart from superstition, I think that's the main reason for keeping that kind of information silent. Okay, so here's where it gets to hypothetical me. As this goes to podcast press, I do not currently have plans to have any kids. Of course, I do love, I think I've heard you call it OPCs. Is that other people's children?
It is.
Yes, I deeply love being around and working with kids. As I've mentioned before, I donate a ton of my time in a creative writing literacy program called Young Storytellers. And I pride myself on being really good, kind of like a favored uncle of sorts for some of my friends' kids. And I love it.
Right.
And I'm not personally sure if I want to take on having my own, but never say never. That being said, the idea of naming one's own child seems like it is drenched in anxiety. It sounds really hard. And I'm not alone. In the New York Times back in 2013, Alex Williams wrote that, quote, baby naming has become an industry, and that's in response to the fact that many prospective parents feel paralyzed trying to find the elusive name that is exotic yet not bizarre, classic yet not pompous, on trend but not trendy. I love that entire sentence. And so, Pete, for this week, I bring to you nomatophobia, the fear of names. The fear of names. Granted, nomatophobia, the fear of names, it's not one-to-one of what I'm talking about, but it's the closest I could get to. Here's my basic worry in a nutshell. A parent is in charge of bringing a child into the world and has the responsibility of giving them a name that will be their kid's calling card for all of their formative years. No young child knows how to ask for a name change until they're way, way older. They probably won't even think it's an option. And I'd be so scared that the name I give them would somehow be made fun of them for something I didn't think of. Now, Pete, were you ever made fun of for your name?
Yes,
Hopefully not yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just tell you, my uncle Glenn, he is sadly passed. I miss him dearly, but when he was older than my dad by 10 years, and my dad's name is Lloyd, and whenever my dad and I would be someplace where Glenn had to introduce us, this is what he would say. And he had a little bit of a lockjaw problem. So sometimes he talked like this, and he couldn't really open his mouth all the way. And he would say, oh, hey, everybody, this is my brother Lloyd, and this is Lloyd's little Peter. And so I was...
Classic Glenn! I love it.
Classic Glenn. And I only marginally regret that I shared that on the podcast, because for most of my youth, I was Little Peter, and he got such a hoot out of that it stuck across the long arc of family history.
Sure.
So yes,
man, and that was a family member. Yikes.
Yeah, right. I would. Also, my last name is Wright, and so I get this all the time. Mr. Wright. I just got this at the TSA a week ago. Mr. Wright, we've been looking for you. Really? You've been looking for Mr. Wright? Really?
Oh,
TSA?
I didn't even get it.
You
I
don't
love
have
it.
anything better to
do? Yeah, Glenn and the TSA. That sounds like the worst.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, good. So you have, bad. You have some experience with that. I didn't mean to say good. I'm glad for your tears. Let's take my name, Tom W. Metz III. If you were a kid, I just assumed that it wasn't the TSA and your uncle. I just thought it was going to be kids making fun of other kids. If you were a kid,
I can't even figure out how I would make fun of your name.
Right? For a number of kids while growing up, I was Tom W. Metz the Turd. Hey, thanks, rhyming.
Oh,
yeah,
man,
and those
I get it.
And those were the ones that I accidentally told my entire name to. I didn't walk around as a child saying I'm Tom W. Metz III. I'm not that much of a creep.
A little bit Richie Rich.
Yeah. For most of my childhood, I actually went by the name of simply T period. And when I was in elementary school, I had, these are adults. I had adult soccer coaches who continually called me Teabag and and kept asking me if I wanted one lump of sugar or two, because homonyms.
T.
Yeah. So,
this has just opened up a wealth of possibility in our relationship. I'm so excited.
I know that we're really ratting each other out for the future, Little Peter. All right. And real quick, if I just let my anxiety flag fly a little bit, my anxiety goes past just rude childish jokes or adult and TSA jokes. There's a lot to consider about naming a child, it seems like. Do I need to honor family history, go all new? What if I name my kid something and a celebrity arrives with the same name and it'll seem derivative when it wasn't? Or the celebrity does something terrible and now all of a sudden I've messed up my son's life by naming him something like Cosby C.K. Metz. I don't know if I was ever if Cosby C.K. Metz would ever be on my list, but I'm just saying.
I don't think. I think you have to think really creatively, and you're a creative guy when it comes to writing, naming characters. I think you're really likely to come up with something that's wildly out of the box that nobody would ever expect. Let's ask for instance, your rescue dog, Foster, what he thinks of it.
I was going to bring that up. Yeah. The history of my name creativity is I'm literally named the same name almost after my father, the father before him. And yes, as we know, I had a foster dog. And when I rescued him, I named him Foster.
Foster.
That's like naming him Furry Orphan. Like, that's just not even a name. It's just like a statement of fact. It's a disaster.
By that reckoning, we already know your child will be named Child.
Exactly.
Don't worry about it.
Smaller me. Yeah, no, it's not. None of this is in my wheelhouse. And apart from that stuff, also, final anxiety that I had is, what if I pick a name that's too common? And he's one of the 11 Aidens, for instance, in kindergarten. I work with kids, and there's a lot of Aidens out there right now. We are Aiden drenched, and that's fine. I'm not saying that their parents made a mistake, but I'm sure that some of those parents are like, ugh, when everyone has to be Aiden Q, Aiden S, Aiden R when you're talking to them in the classroom. What if my spouse? I still have more anxieties. What if my spouse is dead set on a name that I find less than great? I have a friend of a friend who named their daughter Pony, and I'm overjoyed that it works for them. I literally am overjoyed. I'm not sure if that's a choice that I would particularly agree with. I worry about a number of things involving naming a child Pony, and what if my spouse was really dead set on that kind of stuff? To wit, the hypothetical anxiety exists for obviously a myriad of real world reasons. And I wanted to ask you, did you and your beautiful wife have any anxiety about naming either of your beautiful children?
Yes, but our anxiety, I think, was more around the latter, which was are we going to find something we agree on? And I should say, I love my children's names. None of them are the names that I would have gone with. And both of my kids know that. And I think every now and again they come to me and they're like, we know you wanted to name one of us Jack. And I know, but because Jack Ryan, like, what are you going to do?
Sure.
And so I couldn't get away from that. I don't want that to be, it's for them to hold that over their own heads, but I did lose that. We ended up with names that I'm very happy with. They're compromises. They include some family in there. It's good. It's good, but it was hard. It was really hard.
It was hard. Okay.
It's like tabula rasa. Like you could choose anything. You could choose minimize window right. Like it could be anything. And
Adobe Reader Metz.
exactly. Twitterific, right. Like all of those things are open for you to use. And I think that sometimes is the curse of riches with names. How do you land on something?
Well, this makes me feel, because I was a little bit worried, anxiety about sort of bringing up an idea that I didn't have personal contact with, but obviously, yes, it is universal. And I did a little bit of research. And the first thing to know is that if there are any parents listening that are dealing with this, I actually know, other than Scotty and Monica, a number of other people that are currently pregnant and so are probably dealing with this right now. Of course, number one with a bullet, as always, realize you are not alone. There is an entire industry around this. There's paid consultants. There's a ton of books. There's a huge amount of websites with trend data. Now,
wait a minute. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Tom.
Yeah.
Are you serious? Paid consultants?
Paid consultants, Pete. Yes, correct. Now,
are you kidding?
Every
time you bring up somebody who makes a living doing something, you just have to muscle through yourself. I see our future fall of man.
You're talking about those video game coaches that I brought up before, right?
Even. I'm walking away.
You were so angry.
I'm walking away.
All right, Pete's out, everybody. So now it's my time. Okay. Well, first, we're changing something stinky to what's that smell and what's that smell? Number 2. Okay. Now, I don't necessarily personally agree with the idea of paying paid consultants, diving into books, websites with trend data. I think a lot of that stuff is going to add more noise into your head, but I just wanted to bring up those things as evidence that there are a ton of people dealing with this anxiety. Clearly. There's an entire industry built around it. So do not worry. You are not alone. And it's so interesting that you brought up, Pete, that one of the problems, let's say difficulties that you and your beautiful wife had was, would we agree on a name? Scotty and Monica shared with me that they have been using an app called Baby Name, and it actually sounded kind of cool. It gives two different people a list of a ton of names. A couple each day, or however much you want to go through it. And each person can separately click on names that they liked. And then the app would tell the spouses what names they matched on. It's like Baby Name Tinder. It is absolutely Baby Name Tinder. But I like that because in addition to the conversations they're having at dinner, they're able to also sort of maybe go through a lot of lists when they're at work, when they're, waiting in line for something. That's a way, again, of helping cut out some of the din, the huge, as you said, amount of tabula rasa, anything goes amount of names. They did, granted, after a while, they're saying they're starting to fall out of love with it because Scotty, well, he sent me a screen grab of the latest. I think the app is maybe like running out of names because
minimize window.
Yeah, the ones that they were asked to vote on recently included Feike, Feike, Madgekin, which sounds like a dragon, and Tempest. Ooh. Yeah, I kind of like Tempest. I'm going to put that on my list. Okay. Anyways, apart from that, there's, so if you want help from outsiders, there is a ton. Writing in baby name anxiety, baby name help, the internet explodes with help. And so if that just gives you a little bit of comfort, please do it. Past that, I did some soul searching and realized I am lucky to have a lot of friends, and a lot of those friends have kids, and all of the names they have picked for their children have been perfect for me because I already loved their children before I'd even met them.
Yeah.
And your real friends will feel the same way. Do not worry too much. And most importantly, and I think this might be a way of connecting my thoughts to anyone who has the anxiety about this, is it doesn't matter because the most important people in your life, if you're like me, will probably come up with their own version anyway.
That's right.
It's not that it's not because the proper name that you gave them is lacking, but because it's out of love and attention. I won't I won't list the actual names of the amazing children of the friends in my life, but I'm proud to call them all the time by my nicknames for them, which they're okay with because I've been calling them that since they were born. Like Bean, Easy, Finny, Lumpus, Crab, Quenisha, Ashtastic. And when Scotty and Monica have their child, I'm sure I will do that weird me thing, change the name just a teeny bit in a way of making it stand out for me, in a way of sort of showing them that they are unique and I love them very much.
You have to come up with very sweet nicknames because their real name will become pointless as soon as they're 18 and they sell the naming rights to themselves to like Pepsi or First Tech Credit Union. It's the fall of man. That will be handled by a name broker. We're all doomed, soul crushing, and credits roll.
That got dark. Good luck, pony. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/scent of a podcast. There are over 187,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone and other little square devices. Pete?
Well, now I know that as much as reading a tax audit sounds exciting, and I know that there are some of our listeners out there who are dedicated to Audible and to this Audible sponsorship and have done what we've asked them, which is to go listen to the 5-minute samples of all 187 and 1,000 titles.
Yep.
If you haven't come across the category of baby names, you must do this because you can get baby name books. A lot of them
on Audible?
And I find that so awesome.
Baby Is it just a list of names?
As far as I know, it's just people reading lists of names. And you know what? They all seem to be written by Suzanne Thomas and narrated by Betty Johnston. Well, no, 3 of them are. You can get 3 of them that are by the same pair, so you can hear Betty Johnston read list after list of baby names.
Wow.
And they just keep coming.
That's incredible.
Here's Baby Names by Ross Murray, a comprehensive guide to choosing a name, including 3,000 plus baby names on Audible.
Did they know that? Do they know how lists work and how Audible works? That's incredible.
Now, I ask you, put yourself in the shoes of C.J. McAllister, narrated Baby Names, a comprehensive guide to choosing a name, including 3,000 baby names. That is a job right there. You earned every penny on that job.
That is very impressive. Yes, CJ, you are some weird spirit animal for What's That Smell? Because that is very exciting while also a little bit weird and also a little bit confusing.
And I should say, we are not at all lampooning the act of writing books about baby names. Mm-hmm. What we are lampooning is the fact that Audible exists as a mechanism for delivering audiobooks, and that baby name books have run headlong into that channel. That's funny.
I hope you'll also look forward to my future audiobook called Numbers. We list them all. We start with 1, and the sky's the limit, everybody. So for you, the listeners of What's That Smell, remember, you can get a free audiobook with a free 30-day trial. Go to audibletrial.com/scent-of-a-podcast.
Welcome to Street Names of America. I can't wait.
First Street.
Land of opportunity. We don't pay to advertise this show, so we appreciate you sharing it with others you think would be interested. Those 5-star reviews in iTunes and Apple Podcasts really help others discover the show. And so if you like what you've heard, share it. Share it with a friend. Pick up the phone. Call your sister or brother and say, hey, have you heard that great Smell podcast? You should check it out. It's better than baby name books.
Actually, I would say share it with an enemy. Share it with a blood feud, and maybe we can bring you guys together.
That's a great way to end a blood feud. You just walk up to your blood feuder and say, hey, what's that smell?
So many Hatfields and McCoys. Oh.
They could have resolved all of this.
Yep.
Oh, dear. Coming up next week, it's a stone, and it fits comfortably in your mouth. Yeah, analog. Oh, yeah. I bet you programmed your computer with punch cards, old man. Tell
us more stories about the soda shop, you old jerk.
And that sounds like something you might find in a specialty shop.
That sounds like a rash that I've had before. This week's tune is Talk of Calvary by Ziv Moran. Thank you all so much for listening. I'm Tommy Metz III.
And I'm Pete Wright. And we'll be back next week on What's That Smell?